Private Elias Hart had been captured at dawn. One moment he was fighting in the shattered remains of a Belgian farmhouse, the air thick with smoke and splintered brick. The next, his rifle was knocked from his hands, a German shout broke over him like thunder, and rough arms forced him to the ground. Now he walked, hands bound, along a dirt road leading deep into German-held territory. Rain hammered the earth until it became a trail of sucking mud. A line of Allied prisoners shuffled ahead of him, French, British, Belgian, faces hollow, uniforms torn, boots ruined by weeks of shelling and marching. A German guard rode beside them on horseback, eyes sharp, rifle across his chest. He didn't speak, but his presence was enough. No one slowed. No one stopped. By sunset, the prisoners saw it. A cluster of wooden barracks surrounded by barbed wire. Watchtowers. Lanterns swaying. A sign with a single word burned into the wood. Lager 31. A POW camp. Not the worst. But not the kind men came out of unchanged. The gates opened with a metallic groan, like the whole camp was waking up to greet them. A sergeant, clearly in charge, stood with a clipboard, jaw clenched, coat immaculate despite the mud. He looked the prisoners over like cattle. Numbers only, one guard whispered in English. Elias understood enough German to realize what was coming. Names wouldn't matter here. They lined up. The sergeant barked commands. A guard yanked a metal stamp from a bucket of cold water and pressed it against Elias's thin prisoner tag, 31 to 221. That was him now. A number in a system designed to erase identity. The barracks smelled of sweat, mildew, and old wood that had seen too many winters. Inside, men sat on straw mattresses, some barely conscious, others staring into nothing. Elias took a spot by the wall, where a French soldier in a tattered blue coat sat sharpening a piece of metal into something resembling a blade.
"Don't worry," the man said in accented English. "It's not for them. It's for rats." He smiled weakly. It didn't reach his eyes. On his second day, guards dragged Elias and 3 others from their barracks. They were marched to a stone building on the edge of camp, the interrogation hall. Elias could feel every prisoner watching them leave. No one spoke. They didn't have to. The silence said everything. Inside, the room was cold. Too cold. A single table. A lantern. A chair with straps. And an officer in a long, dark coat writing in a leather-bound notebook. He did not look like a soldier. He looked much worse, calm, educated, meticulous. "Private Hart," the man said, perfectly pronouncing his name. "You will answer what I ask. Truthfully. Quickly. You may sit." Elias didn't move. The officer raised an eyebrow. "You think silence protects anyone out there," he said softly. "Your battalion is already broken. I only seek confirmation." He slid a map forward. "Where is the remainder of your company?" Elias swallowed. "Gone," he said. "Dead or scattered." The officer studied him, weighing the tremor in his voice, the exhaustion in his eyes. Then he nodded to the guards. "Put him in the dark cell." Elias felt his stomach drop. He had heard prisoners whisper about it. A storage cellar beneath barracks 4. No windows. No bedding. No light. Just cold, damp earth and the sound of rats scratching in the walls. The officer didn't raise his voice as he spoke. "Perhaps tomorrow you will remember more. It wasn't darkness. Darkness is soft." This was something heavier, like a physical weight pressing on his chest. Hours passed. Maybe days. There was no sense of time down here. Only breathing. Rats scurrying. Occasional footsteps above. Elias counted heartbeats until he lost track. He fought to hold on to memories, of home, of sunlight, of open air. But the cells swallowed them one by one. He didn't know if the Germans intended to break prisoners slowly. Or if the darkness simply did the job for them. In what might have been the second night, Elias heard something new. A whisper. Not a rat. Not a guard. A human voice. "Hey? British?" The voice was thin, raspy, but alive. Elias leaned toward the wall. American, he whispered back. A beat of silence. Even worse luck. The voice chuckled softly, then coughed. My name's Conrad. French. They put me here last week for refusing to sign their papers. What papers? Elias asked. The ones saying we were treated well, Conrad said quietly. The ones they want to show the Red Cross. Elias's blood ran cold. Why are you still alive? Elias whispered. The man hesitated. They need us in pieces, he said. Not dead. Not whole. A pause. Listen to me. There are rumors here. About a transport. What kind of transport? The kind no one returns from. Elias froze. Conrad whispered one more thing, barely audible, like he feared the darkness itself was listening. We have one chance to escape. One. And it has to be soon. Elias pressed his forehead against the wall. This camp was not a place to survive. But maybe it was a place to escape. The guards led them deeper into the forest, the moonlight breaking through the branches in thin silver slashes. Frost clung to the trees, every step crunched. No one spoke, not the prisoners, not the soldiers escorting them. All you could hear were boots, breath, and fear. The path narrowed until they reached a clearing with an old hunting cabin, its wood swollen from years of rain, its windows covered with nailed planks. Smoke curled weakly from a crooked chimney. But the strangest part was the silence. No dogs. No shouting. No activity. Nothing at all. It didn't feel like a prison camp. It felt like a secret. Corporal Stein muttered, "This isn't on any map." And he was right. Real camps were loud, crowded, brutal. This place? It was hidden, like the forest itself was trying to swallow it whole. A German officer stepped out from the cabin, wiping his gloves on his coat. He wasn't like the others. Clean boots. Perfect uniform. A calm expression that somehow made everything worse. He looked at the prisoners one by one, as if studying them, memorizing faces. Bring them inside. The door slammed behind them. Inside smelled of iron, mold, and damp wood. Lanterns flickered along the walls, casting long, warped shadows. The room was divided, half filled with empty bunks and the other half with a table covered in notes, maps, and strange equipment. A single light hung above the table, humming. Private Hale whispered to you, "Why would they bring us here? There's barely room for a dozen." Before you could answer, the officer approached. He placed a hand on your shoulder, almost gentle. He said. You will go first. He guided you to a chair under the hanging light. The room felt colder, even though the lanterns burned hot. The other prisoners watched with wide, helpless eyes. The officer opened a leather folder. Inside were photographs, old, grainy images of other prisoners. Men with hollow eyes. Men sitting in the same chair you were now in. Some images were crossed out. Some had dates. Some had nothing at all. He lifted one photo and held it next to your face. Yes, he whispered. Very similar. Then he smiled. Not cruel. Not angry. Just knowing. He set the photo down and leaned closer. There are things you must understand about this forest, about this war, about what we are truly doing here. His voice dropped to a whisper only you could hear. Not all prisoners are kept for exchange. Some are kept for observation. You swallowed. Observation for what? He straightened. You will see. All of you will see. The room fell dead silent. Then a deep metallic sound echoed from behind the wall, slow, heavy, rhythmic. Clang. 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 Private Hale flinched. Stein stepped back instinctively. Even the guards exchanged uneasy looks. The officer didn't react at all. He simply said, "It is awake again." And with a calm, almost casual wave of his hand, he ordered, "Lock them in." We continue before dawn. The guards grabbed you and dragged you toward a holding room. The metallic sound grew louder, closer. Whatever waited behind that wall wasn't human. And you were going to face it before sunrise. They shoved you into the holding room and slammed the door. The lock clacked shut, metal grinding against metal. Inside, the air was colder, thicker, like breathing through wet cloth. A single lantern burned on a hook, drawing trembling shadows across the wooden walls. Private Hale pressed his ear to the floor. "It's moving," he whispered. "Under us?" And he wasn't wrong. The metallic thuds weren't random anymore, they followed a rhythm. Slow. Heavy. Purposeful. Someone, was pacing beneath the cabin like a chained beast. Corporal Stein clenched his jaw. That's no machine. No generator sounds like that. The boards under your boots vibrated, dust falling from the ceiling with every impact. Clang. 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 Private Hale swallowed hard. What do they have down there? Before anyone could answer, the wall opposite the door groaned, wood bending inward, as if something pushed from the other side. The lantern flickered violently. Stein stepped back, and instinctively going for a rifle he no longer had. "We need to get out of here. Now." Hale rushed to the door, pulling at the handle. "Locked." "You think I don't know that?" Stein snapped. Another thunderous clang hit the wall. This time dust exploded across the room in a cloud. The lantern swung wildly, casting warped shadows that looked almost alive. The thing behind the wall exhaled. You heard it. A long, low, guttural breath that scraped the air like gravel sliding down a pit. Hale froze. Stein's eyes widened. Your heartbeat slammed in your chest. That was no animal. Then footsteps approached from the hallway, human ones. Heavy boots. 3 men, maybe 4. Muffled voices speaking German. The door unlocked with a sharp metallic snap. The officer stepped inside. He looked different now. Paler. More drawn. The calm expression was still there, but tightened, like he was hiding exhaustion or dread. "You will come with me," he said. Stein shook his head. "What is that thing?" The officer ignored the question. "We begin the observation." 2 guards stepped in, rifles raised, forcing you and the others into line. Hale's voice cracked. "What the hell are you observing, ghosts?" The officer paused. He looked Hale dead in the eyes and said, very quietly, "Something far older." Before anyone could react, a chilling sound crawled up from beneath the cabin. Not a clang. Not a breath. But a murmur. A voice. Deep. Broken. Layered. Like 3 people speaking at once through torn vocal cords. It whispered something you couldn't understand. The officer's face went rigid. "Move," he ordered sharply. "Now." You were marched out of the room, through the hallway, and toward a set of stairs you hadn't noticed earlier, leading down into the basement. The murmuring grew clearer. Closer. Alive. Hale whispered, "We're going underground." Stein's voice dropped to a whisper. "What if it's not underground? What if it's below ground?" At the bottom of the stairs, 2 guards pulled open a massive reinforced door, steel plates welded onto wooden beams. Cold, wet air spilled out. Lanterns hissed. The murmuring grew louder. And then you saw it. A long, narrow chamber beneath the cabin, walls of earth and rock reinforced by beams. Chains hung from the ceiling. The floor was soaked with water, ankle deep. And at the far end, lit by a single trembling lantern, stood a cage. A cage big enough for a horse. But what was inside wasn't shaped like any animal you'd ever seen. The guards hesitated. Even they didn't want to go near it. The officer exhaled slowly. "This," he said, "is why you are here." Something inside the cage stirred. Chains rattled. Water rippled. A silhouette rose, slowly, too tall, too thin, too wrong. Private Hale gripped your arm as hard as he could. "Dear God," he whispered. And the creature opened its eyes. Two pale, glowing circles, staring at you through the dark. The creature's eyes stayed fixed on you, unblinking, cold, impossibly aware. Its breath came slow and ragged, each exhale sending ripples across the shallow water. Hale let go of your arm. He didn't move. Couldn't. Corporal Stein stepped forward once, jaw clenched but trembling. This isn't real." The officer didn't look away from the cage. "It is real," he said quietly. "And it is dying." The creature leaned forward, chains scraping like knives across stone. A hand, if you could call it that, slid into the lantern light. Long fingers. Skin stretched tight over bone. Nails black like burned metal. Hale gagged. Stein flinched. But the officer stepped toward the cage. "You see what the war has created," he said softly. "Do you understand now why you are here?" Stein shook his head. "What is it?" The officer swallowed. "An experiment gone wrong. A soldier we tried to make stronger. Faster. A man who volunteered to become more than human." He paused. "But the transformation, it breaks them." The creature's gaze flicked to the officer, and for the first time, you saw something behind those pale eyes. Pain. Recognition. A shattered remnant of a man. Hale whispered, voice cracking, You did this to him." The officer didn't answer. Because the creature did. A sound rose from its throat, not a growl, not a snarl, but a word, or the ghost of one. "Help." The room froze. The guard stumbled back. Even Stein's face went hollow, fear turning into something else. Horror. The officer's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "He suffers. We study. But we cannot undo what's been done." The creature pulled against its chains again. Harder. The metal creaked. Bolts rattled. Mud and water splashed. The officer panicked. "Stand back." Hale grabbed your sleeve, dragging you. His gunner break loose. Another pull. Another snap. One of the chain anchors ripped free from the ceiling. Stein's eyes widened. "We need to move, now." The second chain strained. Screeched. The creature roared, a sound that shook the chamber, vibrating the air in your lungs. The soldiers at the door were too slow. The chain snapped. The creature lunged. The lantern shattered. Darkness swallowed the room. Screams tore through the black. You didn't see who hit the ground first. You only heard boots splashing, fists pounding, metal crashing, bones snapping. Then something grabbed your coat. You spun, ready to fight, but it was Stein, eyes wide with terror. "Run." You and Stein barreled toward the stairwell, Hale right behind you. The officer shouted orders drowned out by the creature's guttural roar. You reached the steps. Scrambled upward. Burst into the hallway. But Hale didn't. You turned. He was frozen halfway up the stairs, staring into the dark below. Something had wrapped around his ankle, a long, skeletal hand gripping tight. "Hale!" Stein shouted. "Grab my hand." Hale reached, fingers brushing Stein's. Then he was yanked downward. His scream echoed through the cabin. Then silence. Only the breathing of the creature remained below, ragged and furious. Stein slammed the basement door shut and shoved a heavy crate in front of it. The officer stumbled into the hall, covered in blood that wasn't his. "Move," he rasped. "Before it finds another way out."